I dropped it down in there. Now I gotta get them bolts off the chain there. Get a hoist out of the way. I'll do the rest of the fine tuning, lining up with the transmission from the bottom side. I can work it better under there. A little bit of leverage and bolts. Let's get this hoist out. Well, that's a chore. It is a chore done there. It's in there. But you can see back there, the bell housing, how it's not lined up yet, but I've got it pushed. I've got it transmission pushed back that way a couple inches, sliding on the mount, so can make it easy to get out. But I think that's about what I'm gonna get done today, and I'll come back tomorrow. Of course, y'all will be just the next clip, but that's the magic. Yep, I'm pretty wore out today, so stick around. We'll get her hooked up. I'll take y'all down underneath. All right, we got that bolt there started. Y'all can see that right there at the end of my finger. And we got that bolt started right there. You see our gap we still got there between the engine and tranny. Well, that's lined up. If you look up inside of there, you see the stud. I've got to turn that a little bit to line up the stud. Turn that torque converter just a little bit to line up the stud on the torque converter with the flex plate. So when I shove this transmission forward, them studs should go right in the hole. Let's see if I can do that. Try to get where y'all can. I've already checked to make sure there's no wires, fuel lines, or anything else hanging down in between the motor and the tranny. I'm just gonna take the pry bar. I'll work that transmission mount back forward. All them two line-up bolts are started on there. And it should work it together. Torque converter's lined up and in there. Just about got that gap sealed up. And work on getting it the rest of the way up there. There y'all can see it is pulled all the way up. No more gap. I got that bolt in. You probably can't see. Another bolt up there. At the end of my finger there. Pretty far up in there. It also holds this overflow tube for the transmission right here on that bolt. And I can't tighten it until I tighten the top one that holds that same tube. So we're gonna go up top, put the top two in while the intake's off and out of the way, while it'll be easier to put the top two bell housing bolts in the middle, in the valley. The top two we gotta get to right here. One of them has this overflow tube on it over here. Another one has this little bracket that holds your wiring harness and your fuel lines up. Kind of tough to do because you're planking to do it, but across the grill, what you call mechanic level planking. But it's easier than getting them from the bottom still, so we'll do them from up here. They go most of the way in by hand anyway, since it's clean block and lined up real well already. Flex head ratchet helps out here too. Alright, got my dipstick tube back in, as you can see right here in the transmission. It will bolt on right there on the side of the block. I'll get it back down a little bit. I've got my transmission bolts, mount bolts back tight. I've got the exhaust there and up there back tight on this side as well. Exhaust 2 bolts tight. And a lot of people try to use this little hump right here to get to the torque converter bolts, but I found it easier to use this hole in the bell housing there. Opposite side of the starter is a hole right here. You can barely see it. But you can get to the nuts there pretty easy with a 3/8 ratchet. So I'll work on them next. It's too hard to get the camera in there to show y'all, but we'll work on that next. When I'm doing the torque converter nuts, I like to put a big 1/2-inch drive, 18mm socket ratchet on the crankshaft bolt to spin the motor. Hangs down through there. Go right up through there. And on the 4-wheel drive models like I'm working on, if you leave the drive shaft, front drive shaft out, then you get right up in here. That hole I was showing you the other day, that socket is on one of them. I just bring it down, and as I rotate the engine around, you can see that moves down into place, and it's real easy to get to do those bolts there. And I'll run them up by hand first with the socket. They're locking nuts, so then I use a long 3/8 drive flex head to finish them off. Y'all back here so you can see it. Maybe bear with me. And that's a 9/16 socket that I'm using on those nuts. Most everything on this truck is metric on the '02 model, but these are 9/16 tried and true. And they're somewhat long-winded, but that's about it. Before you go to tighten them, put your ratchet back on your crankshaft bolt and hold it just a little bit as you tighten these. And I'm gonna come back and torque them. I'll come back and torque them when I get them all on. I think the torque specs on them was around 35, 45 foot-pounds, somewhere in there. But I just want to show you all that access hole, and I'm gonna spin this motor on around, and it spins real easy. So Mike can see. I like to go clockwise with it when I do it. And we'll check to see if I've gotten to my next one yet. So you have to kind of keep looking up in there and when you're spinning it to see if you get the next one. So let me get these other 3 tied on. There's only 4 on there total. And I'll bring you back. All right, got torque converter bolts. Now I gotta get these 3 bolts into the steering pump. Already got it kind of setting up there. It's got a little line up collar on the back bolt hole. If I got that one started or not. It's a little bit like it might be. I'm not gonna tighten it until I get the other 2 started in it at least. Kind of tough to get to. Sorry, I know I'm blocking the camera. It's hard to get to as it is to show on camera. I know I can. I know I can. Let me move y'all over here out of the way for a minute. Got the first one in. The next one is up here. Let's see if we can get y'all up there. In the back top. Should let the truck down some. on my tippy toes. Not gonna tighten that all the way yet. Get the other one in the back. All right, got them 3 bolts in there tight. Ready to pump some fluid. Now we're gonna get the drive shaft bolted back into there. And right here. And we're using, because it's got these 12 spline nuts, or bolts, excuse me. We'll put some Loctite back on the threads. It's handy to have this. This one's made by Snap-on. I don't know who else makes one. Surely they do, somebody. But it's designed for these bolts especially. Makes it easier to get in there on a 1/2-inch drive. So we'll get that put up there. Let me get the rest of these in and get them tightened up, and I'll show you the next step. It's good enough. And we got a little plug. And we got a little plug. Another rubber plug goes up in the torque converter drain hole. Pops in there. I think we'll work on the starter next. This goes in that hole up there in that mess. That looks fun, doesn't it? The starter's gonna sit about like that underneath there. You got 3 bolt holes. this bottom one, we'll take this bolt, which is a bolt made, put your ground wire on, and then your nut. And the top two are just regular old 13mm bolts. So we get that put in there now. We're just gonna kind of move these wires out of the way. Fish this up through there. Past transmission lines and everything else. And turn, set her in like that. Start this bottom bolt, that extra stud on it first. Hopefully. Gotta just about be a contortionist to work on some of this stuff. And I ain't no more. Get my socket. Just kind of give that thing a starter, a little wiggle. Back and forth, side to side, up and down. Usually helps that bolt go in. I need a little bit more. Before I get that bottom one completely tight, I'm gonna put the top two in. I think I can get to them from the inside fender well, so take you out there with me and let's see if we can get them. Pretty handy to have this inner fender well out. You can kind of see the starter there. I'm gonna set my bolt in my socket. I'll come around through the top of the A-arm. I'm gonna start it in that hole right there. If y'all can see it under there. Just about run that up by hand all the way. Now the other one's a little more tricky. It is up in top of there. I'm gonna go right through here, same place, with these long extensions. See if I can get it. It's almost directly on top of the starter. Y'all won't be able to see it. Really, I won't either, but I'm gonna work it by braille. Tell you what, instead of dropping it again, and I don't have no magnetic socket, but I got a little thin piece of paper here. Just gonna set that on top of my socket like that. And I'm gonna force that old bolt off in there like that. And that's gonna hold it for me. Paper around the socket, around the bolt head. We're going in like this here. Here's what I wound up doing. I wound up getting an extension in a deep socket that was just long enough that it would clear the motor mount and get it started in there. And I'm just trying to thread it by hand through here. See, I don't have a lot of room for my hand between the upper A-arm, exhaust manifold. I can turn it about that much a turn. I'm hoping the threads are starting in it. It'd be super handy on that top bolt if you had a 13mm wobble socket like that. I don't, but I do have a 1/2 inch one, so we're gonna try that to finish it off. Now that we got it started anyway. Sounds pretty tight to me. It'd have been a lot easier, but that bolt wouldn't have stayed in that socket to start it really easy. Maybe with some paper around it like I did the other one. But the little wobble sockets, I don't have a good set anymore. I used to, but they're handy, handy. I'm gonna go ahead and get this second one down here while I'm in here. When I broke my back neck, I had to get rid of a lot of tools. I thought my mechanicing was done, but as you and I can see, it ain't over yet. I'm gonna lift it back up and get that bottom bolt, and then we'll hook up some wires. We've got our water tube going in here. We got 2 bolts that holds it. They're in there. One of them's a double studded. Goes in the top hole. You can go ahead and start it. It'll take the ground wire on it once you get it bolted up tight to the water tube. We'll start it. Could probably leave this bolt in on it before I put the motor back in, being as I put in a new long block. Could have put it in first, been easier. And just don't run it all the way up because your tube will slide down behind it. Just like that. Then we'll put the other bolt in down here. And then this ground wire will come up and bolt on like so on the back and go up to the firewall up here. So I'll get that done and bring y'all back. We got this coolant line on. I'm gonna put the clamp back on it. End of it there, so that should be good. Harness up and out of there. So it's out of the way of everything. It's kind of like that. Fuel lines. Fuel lines up here and ready to hook back up when we put the intake back on. Make sure this wire runs out the back. Knock sensor wire. Should be ready to set this intake on and get it bolted down. And it gets 18 foot-pounds of torque on these 10mm bolts. Millimeter bolts all the way around. Start them all by hand, of course. Yep, but I'm gonna go ahead and run these in just to make sure everything's lined up good. We're just gonna run them up on the ratchet and I'll come back and torque them. We get out and get my torque wrench, come back and torque all these down both sides of this intake. I'll come right back. Now we're gonna put these coil packs in next. I've already dielectric these, but put your dielectric grease up here inside this joint, pull this boot off, put your grease up inside of there, keep down the corrosion. We'll go ahead and put them in first. Just kind of put them in and give a little twist of motion as you're doing it. You can put a little bit of grease in here, just a little bit in the bottom. Alrighty, got the fuel rail. As you can see, some of the old injectors left their O-ring down inside here. Just want to make sure you get them out so you're not double stacking O-rings with the new ones. It's pretty self-explanatory, and you probably already knew that, but some of them had a brown O-ring and some had a blue one, so Gotta double check all tubes are clear. I got 3 over here on this one. Just gently popping them out. There we go. And now for the new ones. Before we put them in, I'm going to put a little bit of slickum around the top. And help them slide right in real easy. And we'll come back and we'll do it again on the bottom before we put this assembly in. Give them a little wiggle and twist, and they should go right in there. If this is nothing new to y'all, well, we'll grab you a soda pop and come right back. Hopefully it's a little bit of hint for some of the new guys. We're gonna put a little bit of this around these. Make them slide right in real easy like. Again, we just don't want no cut O-rings. All your little plug-ins are gonna go to the outside. Just back in here. Give it a little force down on it while you're shaking it, wiggling it a bit. It should pop right down in there, no problem. Now we're gonna put the harness back on there. But you don't have to take it off. This one was a little bit dirty, so I didn't want a chance some little crumbs falling down on the inside of this new engine. So that's why I didn't just leave it on there. Plug up the knock sensor just like that. Come over here, plug up. I'm not blocking all the camera view. And plug up that injector. We'll go ahead and run this O2 line down this way. That's where it's going to plug up at down there. We'll go back to the bottom to do that. And we're going to go ahead and plug up our fuel lines. We got one there. And be sure and give the fuel lines a good tug. If you can see me back here on them. Make sure they clip in good. And then you put your safety catch on them as well. Back up. Should click in there pretty good. Get that out of the way. And we'll plug up our injector here. or cool pack, excuse me. Inner injectors. Set this one on that stud. Get this injector. Make sure they click on there good so they don't pop off. This cool pack. That injector. Cool pack. This cool pack. Slide it down over the front stud where that goes. Like that. And this should all be secured. Let's go through the body. One of them has got to go to, there's this one right here. Goes down here to this temperature sensor that we put in new down here in the valley. It's on there. Clicked in good. Got that. Put our, where did I put that? There it is. Get a little bit of that slick them again and put it on this 90 that screws in the back of the intake here. I like this stuff on these O-rings. It makes it to where you don't have to cut an O-ring as bad or fight it, really. And this thing just sticks in and twists and lock back here. Should go right there on the back of the intake to that 90. And then we're going to put a new rubber 90 over here because this is collapsed. It's very common on these trucks. It's very common for that little 90 there to be rotten and collapsed and sucking air. And it also sucks a lot of dirt into your truck. So I'll grab that 90. I left it over there. We got a new PCB valve going in. Still gotta hook up this side anyway, so let me do that and I'll come back to y'all. All right, I got that oil sending wire right there, if you can see it. Let me zoom her in. Plugged up on the back of the oil filter housing. I got this other wire underneath there, compressor. It goes to the crank sensor. Right there. Got it plugged in. Got the AC compressor plugged in. Got the O2 sensors plugged in. One on this side, right up in that gap there. One on the other side. Moving right along. Didn't get to show you all that. It's just too tight of quarters, but I'll show you where they're at. Hopefully that helps. We're gonna put our throttle body back on. Down here where I can work a little easier. hook up the idle air motor. We can plug back in our brake booster. And we can plug up throttle position sensor. This little evap emissions hose goes up here, top of the throttle body. We need an EGR valve, don't we? With a new EGR valve gasket. Here's my recording stopped. It says my camera is full, so I may have to hook up some more of this and I'll come back and show y'all. See if I can get some of this off my camera. All right, I got some of it cleared up. Got my EGR tube right here, back on, tight here, and there's 1¼ wrench tightens that up. Got a bracket up here with the DPFE valve, the purge valve. Plug the purge valve up there. Bracket goes on that stud there. Gets one of these bolts right here. It's 10mm. Plug in. Take this back off so I can see better. Right here. With the 2 vacuum line hook up. This goes to the EGR valve. This one comes around over here to the passenger side. Ties in with this little evap line that we'll replace, because that line, as you can see, is pretty juicy and fried. So we'll replace that one. And another set of vacuum lines here. Goes around here, and the red one ties on to the fuel regulator. This big one ties onto the throttle body mounting plate, and this other one ties into this T over here that I'm going to replace. And this little white one right here comes all the way over here, top of the brake booster, to this evap purge valve. It'll be where it hooks up. There. Power steering bracket here. We still got to tighten it on the bottom, but bring y'all back for a bit. I got this bracket, throttle cable, and cruise control cable bracket bolted on. Cables are hooked up. I got this aftermarket air cleaner bracket, the sensor here, put on, plugged in, tightened up. Got the new belt put on. If you want to see how it's routed, goes around the AC, up around the AC, and both sides come up between that, around that, down around the crank, water pump, power steering, alternator, and back. And that's how that belt runs. So I got this bracket on here, 2 bolts there, 1 bolt there, stabilize power steering. And next I'll probably put the fan blade on, and then the fan shroud and then the radiator, then the upper radiator hose, and probably last I'll put the air cleaner on. So just give y'all an idea of where it's at now. And I did take this heater hose back loose and run this hot cable from the alternator underneath it, put that back on, clamps back on it. Just supposed to run it under there. So anywho, just in case y'all are working on one and get lost somewhere, hopefully this is a little bit of a road map. Went ahead and replaced this evap hose right here, fuel tank vent hose. It was rotten. Got the water bottle hooked back up. Got that clamp and lower radiator hose hooked back up in there. All like on this side's the oil filter. Power steering bracket, bolts, lower bolts. One is, let's see, one is there. And can't really show you the other one, I guess. Okay. Yeah, there it is, right under that bracket. Big headed bolt, right there. Got both of them tight anyways, they're 18 millimeter. On to the next stuff. I got the lower radiator hose on, lower transmission line, upper transmission line, fan shroud. Because this truck has a body lift, they have that fan shroud mounted a little weird, but we just put it back the way they had it. See the body lift it's got on it. Made the engine swap a little easier, I'll give it that. Maybe something to think about when you're swapping one of these. Maybe just lift your cab up about 3 extra inches on them 6 bolts down through there. And make it a little easier on yourself. Get the stuff. Just lift it up and block it off if nothing else. Till you get done. Shouldn't be too hard to do. I'll get up there and get the top radiator hose and other bracket on. All right, we got the upper radiator hose back on. Little brackets. All we really like now is the air filter assembly and waiting on the, then we'll put the oil in it and antifreeze and we'll spin her over. But before I do, I will be pulling the fuel pump relay, and that way we can spin it over and let the oil prime the engine before it takes its first spark and fire up. Let that oil get good and circulated through the engine. So I'll bring y'all back for that. We got the Motorcraft filter going on. We're pre-lubed on our O-ring and we're pre-filled. And now we're gonna take it and number on it, 820 is. We're gonna take it and put it on this truck. Just a quick note, and you all know this already, but before you start putting fluids back in it, double check stuff like your petcock valve that you had open at the beginning, your oil drain plugs under the engine there, and any other water places you took, like plugs you took out for antifreeze or oil to drain. Just double check them all before you put fluids back in them. It's a lot cleaner that way. Looking at your engine compartment fuse box, we pulled the fuel pump relay out right here. That's relay number 301 on your lid there. You see it right there. And the way these are, they're backwards. You gotta kind of imagine them being down like that is by what the layout is. I don't know why Ford did that, but anyways, fuel pump fuse is number 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 right here in this empty spot. And we pulled it out. It takes a little 20 amp mini fuse, so you can get in your book and find, if you have your owner's manual, find which one is for yours. But this is for a 02 F150 4 drive crew cab 5.4 liter with automatic. That's the fuel pump relay and fuse location. So now we're going to spin it over and bring y'all right back. You will have catastrophic failure if you don't pull that fuel pump fuse and fuel pump relay to prime the engine with oil. Being it's a new engine, we crank it over, let the oil pump prime the engine with oil. Without doing that, you can have catastrophic failure. Some of your key takeaways here to make this job easier is go ahead and move that transmission back all the way on its mounts. It gives you a couple inches of extra space getting the motor out and putting it in. Also pull your inner fender linings on the front. It takes a few minutes each side, makes it easy to get to a lot of stuff. And you can leave your exhaust manifolds and wiring harness attached to the engine while you pull it and install it. And also pull the intake off to make the top 2 bell housing bolts and water pipe easier to get to. Appreciate y'all watching. Hope y'all have a good one. I don't know about y'all, but I'm ready to hear this thing crank. Get y'all up here on it. That's what it's supposed to be right there. No noises, no leaks. Sounds good. Sounds real good. No exhaust leaks. Yeah, boy. We about done with this thing. I'll get the hood bolted back on.